Dr. Elijah Bennett stood at the edge of Willow Creek, the small Appalachian town nestled in the blue-green valleys of West Virginia that had once been his home. The autumn breeze carried the scent of pine and wood smoke, awakening memories he'd spent years trying to forget. His fingers tightened around the leather handle of his cane, the only physical reminder of the darkness that had become his constant companion for the past 7 years. "We're almost there, Dr. Bennett," his assistant, Marcus, said from behind the wheel of the SUV. "The property is just around the next bend." Elijah nodded, though he couldn't see the winding road ahead or the brilliant tapestry of fall colors that Marcus had been describing since they'd entered the mountain pass. His world had been reduced to sounds, smells, and the faithful presence of Scout, his golden retriever guide dog who sat patiently at his side. "How does it look, Marcus?" he asked, his deep voice carrying the weight of a man who had seen too much of the world before losing his sight. "Beautiful. Overgrown, but beautiful. The old Whitaker property has good bones," Marcus replied, his voice tinged with the respect he always showed his employer. "Perfect for the clinic you're planning." Elijah smiled faintly. At 42, he had accomplished more than most could hope for in several lifetimes. After graduating from Johns Hopkins, he had dedicated his medical career to serving those most in need, establishing a network of community clinics across 3 continents. A humanitarian award hung in his office in Boston, along with countless other accolades that meant nothing to him now. The explosion during a humanitarian mission in Sudan had taken his sight, but not his purpose. "Stop the car," Elijah said, suddenly, his head turning slightly as if catching a distant sound. Marcus pulled over immediately, accustomed to his employer's sometimes unpredictable requests. "What is it, sir?" But Elijah was already opening the door, Scout following his practiced movements with the synchronized precision that came from years of partnership. The dog guided him from the vehicle onto what felt like a gravel shoulder. "There's a stream nearby," Elijah said, more to himself than to Marcus. "Willow Creek itself. I used to fish here with my father before medical school." He stood still, allowing the sounds of the water to wash over him like a baptism. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolled 3 times. The soundscape of Willow Creek was returning to him, piece by piece. "Our appointment at the property is in 30 minutes, Marcus reminded him gently. Elijah nodded. "Let's continue. I've waited 20 years to return. I can wait another half hour." Back in the car, Elijah's thoughts wandered to the real reason for his return. Not just the new clinic he planned to establish, not just the desire to bring quality healthcare to this forgotten corner of Appalachia where opioid addiction had ravaged communities. No, there was something else, someone else, that had pulled him back to Willow Creek like a compass needle finding north. Sarah Williams, the woman whose laughter had once been the soundtrack to his dreams, whose touch had anchored him during the turbulent years of medical school. The woman he had left behind, promising to return once he'd made something of himself. The promise he had broken. "We're here, sir," Marcus announced, pulling into a long, overgrown driveway that led to the abandoned Whitaker estate. "The real estate agent is already waiting." Elijah straightened his tie and allowed Scout to guide him from the vehicle. The crunch of fallen leaves beneath his feet, the distant call of a crow, the faint scent of decomposing vegetation, all painted a more vivid picture for him than any sight could have provided. "Dr. Bennett, what an honor to meet you," a woman's voice called out. The click of high heels on pavement approached. "I'm Rebecca Harmon with Valley Real Estate. We spoke on the phone." "Ms. Harmon," Elijah extended his hand, which she shook firmly. "Thank you for accommodating us on short notice." "Not at all. It's not every day a world-renowned physician decides to open a clinic in Willow Creek. The town council is buzzing with excitement." Elijah smiled diplomatically. "I'd prefer to keep things quiet until the details are finalized. The clinic will focus on family medicine and addiction recovery services. This community needs both." For the next hour, Rebecca guided him through the sprawling Victorian mansion that had once belonged to the town's founding family. With Marcus providing additional details and Scout navigating the occasionally treacherous floors, Elijah formed a mental blueprint of what would become the Willow Creek Community Health Center. The property includes 10 acres with the main house, carriage house, and what used to be the gardener's cottage, Rebecca explained, as they stood on what felt like a wooden porch. The location is ideal, secluded enough for patients seeking privacy, but only a 10-minute drive from downtown. It's perfect, Elijah decided, already envisioning examination rooms, counseling offices, and community spaces. I'll have my foundation's legal team draw up the papers immediately. Rebecca couldn't contain her excitement. This will mean so much to Willow Creek, Dr. Bennett. Since the coal mines closed and the opioid crisis hit, we've been struggling. The nearest hospital is 40 minutes away, and many folks here can't afford transportation, let alone medical care. That's why I'm here, Elijah said simply. After finalizing the preliminary arrangements, Elijah asked Marcus to drive him into town. I need to reacquaint myself with Willow Creek, he explained. Perhaps stop by Molly's diner if it's still there. According to my research, it is, Marcus confirmed, though it's called Emma's Diner now. Elijah nodded, a wave of nostalgia washing over him. Molly's Diner had been where he and Sarah had shared countless meals, where he had first told her he loved her over lukewarm coffee and apple pie. The drive into town took less than 10 minutes. Elijah could sense the changes even without seeing them. The quieter streets, the lack of bustling commerce, the subtle signs of economic decline that Marcus had described in his pre-trip briefing. Willow Creek had fallen on hard times, like many small rural communities across America. Here we are, sir. Emma's Diner, formerly Molly's, Marcus announced, pulling into a parking space. Scout guided Elijah from the car to the entrance, the bell above the door jingling merrily as they entered. The smell of coffee, grilled onions, and freshly baked pie enveloped him immediately, transporting him back 2 decades. Take a seat anywhere, hun, a waitress called out. I'll be with you in a jiffy. Elijah allowed Scout to lead him to a booth near the window, where Marcus helped him settle in. The vinyl seat squeaked beneath him, exactly as he remembered. Coffee? The waitress asked, approaching their table. Her voice was warm, with the distinct local accent that had once been as familiar to Elijah as his own reflection. Please, he replied. As she poured, Elijah caught a whiff of something familiar, a subtle scent of lavender and vanilla that instantly triggered a cascade of memories. His heart raced as he tilted his head upward, though he couldn't see her face. Emma, is it? He asked carefully. There was a moment of silence, then the sound of the coffee pot being set down on the table with a bit more force than necessary. No, the waitress replied, her voice suddenly tense. Emma's my boss. I'm just filling in today. Elijah nodded, trying to ignore the disappointment settling in his chest. I used to come here when it was Molly's. I grew up in Willow Creek. Did you now? Her tone was non-committal, but something in it made Elijah's skin prickle with awareness. Yes, I've been away for some time, but Elijah Bennett, she interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought you'd never come back. The coffee cup Elijah had been reaching for froze midway to his lips. That voice. He knew that voice. Sarah, he breathed, hardly daring to believe it. Hello, Elijah, she confirmed, a complex mixture of emotions coloring those 2 simple words. 20 years collapsed in an instant. Despite his blindness, Elijah could picture her perfectly. The golden brown hair that fell in waves to her shoulders, the constellation of freckles across her nose, the eyes that shifted between green and blue, depending on the light. I didn't expect to find you here, he managed, setting down his cup with an unsteady hand. Clearly, Sarah replied, her tone cooler now, what brings the great Dr. Bennett back to our humble town, slumming it for a charitable cause? Marcus shifted uncomfortably across the table, but Elijah raised a hand slightly, signaling him to stay silent. I'm opening a clinic, Elijah explained, struggling to keep his voice even, on the old Whitaker property. A soft, humorless laugh escaped Sarah's lips. Of course you are, saving the world, one small town at a time. Before Elijah could respond, the bell above the door jingled again, followed by the sound of children's voices, high-pitched, excited, and remarkably similar. "Mom! Mom!" they called in near-perfect unison. "Girls, keep your voices down," Sarah admonished, but there was unmistakable tenderness beneath her stern tone. "I'm working." "But Miss Patterson said we did so good on our science projects that we all get gold stars," one of the children announced proudly. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Sarah replied, her voice softening completely. "Tell you what, grab that booth in the corner and do your homework. When my shift ends in an hour, we'll celebrate with ice cream at home." The excited shuffle of small feet moved away, and Elijah found himself straining to make sense of what he'd just heard. Girls. Multiple voices that sounded nearly identical. Sisters, obviously, but how many? "Your daughters?" he asked quietly. Sarah was silent for a moment. "Triplets. Megan, Madison, and Mackenzie. They're 6. Elijah nodded, trying to process this unexpected information. "They sound wonderful." "They are," Sarah agreed, her protective instinct evident in her tone. "Now, did you want to order something or just coffee?" The sudden shift back to waitress mode was jarring, but Elijah understood. This wasn't the place for the conversation they needed to have. "Just coffee for now," he replied. "But Sarah, I'd like to talk when you're free." Another pause, this one longer and heavy with unspoken words. "I get off at 5, she finally said. "Meet me at Riverside Park by the old gazebo, if you still remember where that is." "I remember," Elijah assured her, his heart pounding with a mixture of anxiety and hope. "I'll be there." As Sarah walked away to tend to other customers, Elijah sat back in the booth, his coffee forgotten. Coming back to Willow Creek had been about redemption, about giving back to the community that had shaped him. He'd never expected to find Sarah. Still here, never dared to hope that he might have a second chance to make things right with her. Marcus leaned forward. "Sir, is everything all right?" Elijah ran a hand over his face, feeling the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future pressing down on him. "I'm not sure, Marcus, but I think this is why I was meant to come back." Outside, the autumn wind picked up, sending a cascade of leaves swirling past the diner window. Like those leaves, Elijah's carefully constructed life plan had just been caught in an unexpected gust, carrying him toward a destination he couldn't see, but somehow knew he was meant to find. The gazebo at Riverside Park stood like a ghost from the past, its white paint peeling in places, but its structure still solid, against the backdrop of the setting sun. Elijah sat on one of the benches inside, Scout lying obediently at his feet. The rushing sound of the nearby river provided a familiar soundtrack to his racing thoughts. "You came," Sarah's voice approached from the gravel path. Even without seeing her, Elijah could detect the slight hesitation in her step, the way she paused at the gazebo entrance before climbing the 3 wooden steps. "I said I would." Elijah stood, an automatic gesture of respect that felt both formal and inadequate given their history. "Thank you for meeting me." Sarah settled on the bench, opposite him, leaving a careful distance between them. The scent of lavender and vanilla drifted toward him again, mingled now with the crisp autumn air. "Your daughters? Are they with someone?" Elijah asked. "My neighbor watches them when I work late shifts," Sarah explained. "Mrs. Tanner, she's been a godsend since we moved back to Willow Creek." "You left?" This surprised Elijah. Sarah had always spoken of her deep roots in the town, her desire to stay where generations of her family had lived. "For about 10 years, she confirmed. "Moved to Pittsburgh after—" She paused. "After you left. Came back when the girls were 2. My parents were getting older, needed help with the house." Elijah nodded, processing this new information. "And their father?" he asked, the question escaping before he could consider its propriety. The silence that followed was so pronounced that even Scout lifted his head, sensing the tension. "Not in the picture," Sarah finally said, her voice clipped. "Never was. Really?" Elijah wanted to press further, but sensed that territory was still too raw, too guarded. Instead, he shifted the conversation. "I'm sorry for how I left things," he said softly. 20 years ago, I mean." Sarah made a sound, half laugh, half scoff. "Are you?" The great Dr. Bennett, humanitarian extraordinaire, sorry for leaving little old Willow Creek behind? Somehow, I doubt that. The bitterness in her voice stung, though Elijah knew he deserved it. I wrote to you, he said. For nearly a year after I left, you never answered. I never got any letters, Elijah, Sarah replied, genuine confusion evident in her voice. This revelation hit Elijah like a physical blow. What? But I sent them to your parents' address. Twice a week at first, then monthly when you didn't respond. Well, they never reached me, Sarah said firmly. Not one. Elijah's mind raced, trying to make sense of this. Had her parents intercepted the letters? They had never approved of their relationship, viewing Elijah, the son of Lebanese immigrants, who ran the local grocery store, as beneath their daughter. I thought you'd moved on, he admitted. Found someone else, forgotten about me. When you didn't respond, it seemed clear you wanted nothing more to do with me. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice had lost some of its edge. What happened to your eyes, Elijah? Marcus mentioned an accident. Elijah's hand instinctively went to Scout's head, drawing comfort from the dog's steady presence. Sudan. 7 years ago. We were setting up a clinic in a conflict zone. There was an explosion, unexploded ordnance that no one knew was there. 3 of my colleagues didn't survive. I was lucky. I'm sorry, Sarah said, and he could hear the genuine sympathy beneath her words. I heard about your work over the years. Newspaper articles, TV segments. You've done remarkable things. All the things I promised I would, Elijah said quietly. When I asked you to wait for me, to believe in me, the memory hung between them, as vivid as if it had happened yesterday instead of 2 decades ago. Their last night together, standing in this very gazebo, Elijah holding her hands and vowing to return once he'd made something of himself, once he could offer her more than the limited prospects of Willow Creek. Why did you really come back? Elijah? Sarah asked, cutting through the nostalgia. Because it was time, he answered simply. I've built clinics all over the world, but never here where I started. And after the accident, he paused, searching for the right words. When you lose your sight, you start to see other things more clearly. Regrets, missed opportunities, the foundations you left unbuilt. And that's all? Sarah pressed. Just professional closure? Elijah hesitated. I thought about you, he admitted. Over the years. More than I should have, probably. But I never expected to find you still here, let alone what? A single mother of triplets, waiting tables instead of fulfilling my potential? The edge had returned to Sarah's voice. Because I did have potential, Elijah. I had dreams too. I know you did, Elijah said softly. You were the most brilliant person I knew. Your research on local medicinal plants was groundbreaking, even as an undergraduate. What happened to those dreams? Sarah stood suddenly, her movement sharp enough that Scout sat up attentively. Life happened, Elijah. Not all of us had the luxury of pursuing our ambitions without looking back. Elijah rose as well, carefully, his hand finding the edge of the bench for balance. Sarah, I didn't mean... My shift starts at 6 tomorrow. Morning? She interrupted. I need to get back to my girls. Of course, Elijah conceded, but perhaps we could talk again? There's so much I'd like to know, so much I'd like to explain. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the rushing water and distant bird song. The clinic you're opening, Sarah finally said. Will it have a botanical medicine component? The question caught Elijah off guard. It's not in the current plans, but it could. Why? Because I never stopped studying, Sarah replied, and for the first time, Elijah heard a note of pride break through her guarded tone. Even while raising the girls, working double shifts. I completed my degree online, ethnobotany with a focus on Appalachian medicinal plants. I've been experimenting with formulations that could serve as alternatives to opioids for pain management. Elijah couldn't contain his smile. That's Sarah, that's incredible. It's unproven, she corrected. Promising initial results, but without proper lab facilities, clinical trials, which the clinic could provide, Elijah finished, understanding dawning. Sarah, would you consider joining the project? As a research partner. Another pause, this one thoughtful rather than tense. I'm not a charity case, Elijah. I don't need saving. I'm not offering charity, he insisted. I'm offering a professional collaboration based on your expertise. The foundation would fund your research properly, provide you with the facilities and assistance you need. This could help countless people struggling with addiction. And my daughters? Sarah asked, practical concerns clearly at the forefront of her mind. I can't work the hours you probably expect. They need stability. We'll create a daycare facility at the clinic, Elijah suggested without hesitation. For staff children and patients' children, it's something I've implemented at other locations with great success. He could almost feel Sarah's skepticism radiating across the space between them. You've thought of everything, haven't you? Hardly, Elijah admitted, but I'm willing to find solutions if you're willing to consider the offer. The sound of Sarah's footsteps circling the gazebo told Elijah she was thinking, processing. Finally, she stopped directly in front of him. I'll need to see a formal proposal. Research parameters, compensation package expectations, everything in writing. Relief flooded through Elijah. It wasn't forgiveness, wasn't reconciliation, but it was a start. Of course, I'll have Marcus draft something immediately. And this is strictly professional, Sarah added firmly. Whatever happened between us 20 years ago stays there. I won't complicate my daughter's lives with distractions. The word stung, but Elijah nodded. Understood, professional colleagues only. I should go, Sarah said, and he heard her steps heading toward the gazebo stairs. She paused after descending. For what it's worth, Elijah, I am sorry about your eyes. But you always did see the world differently than most people. Maybe now you'll see it more honestly. With that cryptic parting comment, she was gone, the sound of her footsteps receding down the gravel path. Elijah remained in the gazebo long after Sarah had left, replaying their conversation in his mind. Scout eventually nudged his hand, signaling it was time to go. As he stood to leave, Elijah's cane struck something on the bench where Sarah had been sitting. Carefully, he reached down to investigate. It was a small, worn book with a leather cover. Elijah ran his fingers over the surface, recognizing the texture immediately. It was a field journal, the kind botanists used for taking notes during specimen collection. Sarah must have dropped it accidentally. He slipped it into his pocket, intending to return it to her the next day. It was only when he was back at the hotel, with Marcus having retired to his own room, that curiosity got the better of him. Scout, find Marcus's laptop, he instructed the dog, who promptly led him to the desk, where his assistant had left the computer. Elijah opened the journal to a random page and placed it on the scanner attachment that Marcus used to convert printed documents into audio for him. After a few moments, the text-to-speech program began to read. April 15th, 2022. Field location: Blackwater Falls, Eastern Slope. Specimens collected: 3 varieties of Echinacea, 1 unidentified fungal growth from fallen oak, potential antimicrobial properties. Note: girls spotted a black bear from the car. Their excitement nearly derailed the entire expedition, but their observational skills are improving. Mackenzie correctly identified poison oak without prompting. Her interest in botany continues to develop, perhaps following in her father's footsteps without even knowing it. Elijah's finger hit the pause button so quickly he nearly knocked the journal from the scanner. He sat frozen, the implications of what he'd just heard thundering through his mind. Following in her father's footsteps. But Sarah had said the girl's father wasn't in the picture, never had been. Unless... With shaking hands, Elijah reopened the journal and flipped to the front cover, running his fingers along the edge until he found what he was looking for. A small pocket often included in such journals for storing small specimens or notes. From the pocket he extracted a folded photograph. Though he couldn't see it, he held it reverently, understanding instinctively that it contained answers to questions he hadn't even formulated yet. He would need to ask Marcus to describe it to him in the morning. For now, he returned the photo to its hiding place and closed the journal, his mind racing with possibilities that seemed simultaneously impossible and the only logical explanation. The triplets were 6 years old. 7 years ago, Elijah had been in Sudan just before the explosion that took his sight, but 8, perhaps 9 years ago, there had been a medical conference in Pittsburgh, a chance encounter in a hotel bar with a woman whose voice he'd recognized immediately, whose touch had awakened memories he'd spent years trying to suppress. They'd spent a weekend together, a brief, passionate reunion before Elijah had left for another international mission, promising to call when he returned. A promise that had been buried beneath the rubble of an explosion half a world away, along with his sight and so many other possibilities. Elijah carefully placed the journal on the nightstand and made his way to the window, opening it to let the cool night air wash over him. Somewhere out there, in the darkness of Willow Creek, were 3 little girls who might, just might, be a part of him he never knew existed. And Sarah, who had carried this secret alone for years, who had rebuilt her life around these children without his knowledge or support. Sarah, who had every reason to hate him, but who had agreed to work with him despite their complicated past. Tomorrow he would need to find a way to broach this subject with her, to ask the question that now burned in his mind. But he would need to tread carefully. Whatever the truth might be, it was clear that Sarah had created a stable life for her daughters, one that didn't include Elijah Bennett. Until now. As the night breeze carried the scent of pine and distant wood smoke, Elijah made a silent promise to himself and to the daughters he might never have known he had. This time, he would not leave. This time, he would stay and face whatever consequences awaited him. This time, he would build something lasting in Willow Creek, whether or not Sarah allowed him into their lives as anything more than a professional colleague. The wind shifted, carrying the distant sound of laughter from somewhere in town. Elijah closed his eyes, imagining the sound might be the triplets, Megan, Madison, and Mackenzie, preparing for bed, unaware that their world was about to change in ways none of them could predict. Scout padded over and rested his head on Elijah's knee, a comforting weight in the darkness. Tomorrow would bring new revelations, new challenges, but for tonight, Elijah allowed himself to wonder, to hope, and to plan for a future suddenly filled with possibilities he had never dared to imagine. Morning arrived with a gentle rain tapping against the hotel window. Elijah had barely slept, his mind cycling through memories and possibilities. By the time Marcus knocked on his door at 7, he had already showered and dressed, Sarah's journal safely tucked in his jacket pocket. "Good morning, sir," Marcus greeted him. "You're up early." "I need you to do something for me," Elijah said, foregoing their usual pleasantries. "There's a photograph in the front pocket of this journal." He extracted the small leather-bound book and held it out. "I need you to describe it to me." Marcus took the journal and carefully removed the photograph. "It's a bit faded, looks to be about 7 or 8 years old. It shows 3 newborn babies in hospital bassinets side by side. They're wearing pink caps." He paused. "There's a woman in a hospital bed behind them. Brown hair, looks exhausted but happy, and there's a date stamp in the corner, September 15th, 2018. "Is there anything written on the back?" Elijah asked, his voice tight. Marcus turned the photo over. "Yes, Megan, Madison, and Mackenzie Williams, 6 pounds 2 ounces, 5 pounds 11 ounces, 6 pounds even, their father's eyes." Elijah sank into the nearest chair, the confirmation washing over him. "Their father's eyes," he repeated softly. "Sir?" Marcus's voice held concern. "Is everything all right? Whose journal is this?" "Sarah Williams," Elijah replied, "the waitress from the diner yesterday, and I believe I'm the father of her children." An hour later, Elijah stood outside Emma's diner, Scout by his side. The bell jangled as he entered. "Good morning," a different voice than Sarah's greeted him. "Take a seat anywhere, hun." "Actually," Elijah said, "I was hoping to speak with Sarah Williams. Is she working today?" Sarah. The woman, Emma herself, sounded surprised. "No, she called in this morning. Said one of her girls woke up with a fever. First time she's missed a shift in months, poor thing." Do you happen to have her address? Elijah asked. I have something of hers I need to return. Emma hesitated. And you are? An old friend, Elijah replied. Dr. Elijah Bennett. I've just moved back to town to open a clinic. Dr. Bennett? Emma's tone shifted to one of recognition. Well, why didn't you say so? Sunrise Apartments, Building C, Unit 304, about 10 minutes from here, off Maple Street. At Sarah's apartment, Elijah knocked on door 304, journal clutched in his hand. The door opened partially, the security chain still engaged. Elijah? Sarah's voice registered surprise. How did you find my apartment? Emma gave me your address, he explained. You left this at the gazebo yesterday. He held out the journal. I thought it might be important to you. The door closed briefly, then reopened fully. Come in, Sarah said, resignation mixing with something else in her tone. Mackenzie has a slight fever. She's resting on the couch. Elijah stepped inside, immediately struck by the modest warmth of the apartment. The scents of herbal tea and children's medicine mingled with the underlying notes of lavender and vanilla. Mom, who is it? A small voice called from what Elijah presumed was the living room. A friend of mine, Sarah answered, Dr. Bennett. He's going to be opening a new clinic in town. Scout led Elijah carefully through the entryway. He could sense the smallness of the space, hear the slight echo that suggested sparse furnishings. Are you going to make Kenzie better? Another child's voice, nearly identical to the first but with a slightly different inflection, asked from closer by. Elijah smiled in the direction of the voice. I'm not that kind of doctor today. I just came to return something to your mother. She makes the yuckiest medicine, the girl confided, but she says the worse it tastes, the better it works. That's often true, Elijah agreed, charmed by the child's frankness. And you are? I'm Madison, she replied proudly. Megan's in the kitchen making tea and Kenzie's the sick one. Sarah cleared her throat. Madison, honey, would you go check on your sister? Make sure she's drinking her water. Okay, Mom. Small footsteps padded away, leaving Elijah alone with Sarah. I'm sorry about the intrusion, Elijah said quietly, extending the journal toward her. But after I found this, I discovered something I think we need to discuss. Sarah took the journal from his hand. You read it. It wasn't a question. I had Marcus scan a page for me, Elijah admitted. And we found the photograph. Sarah, why didn't you tell me? Yesterday, at the gazebo. Not here, Sarah interrupted, her voice low and urgent. Not with the girls awake. They don't know, Elijah, about you, I mean. The confirmation hit him with the force of physical contact. So it's true. They're mine. Sarah's silence was answer enough. Can you come back tonight? Around 8. Mrs. Tanner next door can listen for the girls while they sleep. Of course, Elijah agreed immediately. Sarah, Not now, she repeated firmly. Please. That evening, Elijah returned to Sarah's apartment. After the girls were asleep, Sarah guided him through their lives via a photo album, describing each image in detail. The triplets as newborns, their first birthday celebration, preschool graduations, Halloween costumes, Christmas mornings. With each description, Elijah felt a curious mixture of joy and grief. Joy at discovering these precious moments, grief at having missed them. By the time Sarah closed the album, Elijah's cheeks were damp with silent tears. They're extraordinary, he said simply. They are, Sarah agreed. And they're happy, Elijah. Despite everything, the small apartment, my long hours, the occasional struggle to make ends meet, they're genuinely happy children. I don't want to disrupt that, Elijah assured her. But I want to be part of it if you'll let me. Not to take over, not to supplant what you've built, but to add to it. And when you leave again? Sarah asked. When the next crisis calls you to some distant corner of the world? I'm not leaving, Elijah stated firmly. The clinic here in Willow Creek is my last project. This is where I'm putting down roots, Sarah, where I intend to stay. After much discussion, Sarah agreed to allow Elijah to meet the girls properly, though they would need to take things slowly. introducing him first as a friend before revealing his true relationship to them. As their conversation was wrapping up, Sarah shared a troubling development. "I've had an uncomfortable encounter with Richard Caldwell. Do you know him?" Caldwell. The name sounds vaguely familiar, Elijah frowned. "He owns Caldwell Pharmaceuticals," Sarah explained. "He approached me at the diner, offered me a job on the spot. Twice my current salary to work in his R&D department. When I declined, he wasn't pleased. Said something about how Willow Creek doesn't need outsiders coming in and disrupting established businesses. Sounds like we've got competition we didn't anticipate," Elijah noted with concern. "Or opposition," Sarah corrected. "Elijah, Caldwell has influence here. His company employs a lot of people, sponsors local events, donates to political campaigns. If he decides your clinic is a threat to his business interests, then we'll need to be prepared," Elijah finished. "Thank you for the warning." Later investigation revealed troubling information about Caldwell Pharmaceuticals, regulatory violations, improper marketing of opioid medications to rural clinics, and questionable lobbying practices. If Elijah and Sarah were planning to research non-addictive pain management alternatives, they would be directly threatening a significant revenue stream for Caldwell. The next day, after receiving information that Caldwell might be monitoring Sarah, Elijah called her with concern. "I think we need to be careful, very careful." "I'm listening," Sarah replied, her voice low. "Not over the phone," he said. "Can you meet me tomorrow? At the gazebo again, perhaps?" "I work until 4, Sarah reminded him. "After that, I could spare an hour." 4:30 at the gazebo, Elijah confirmed. "And Sarah, maybe don't mention this meeting to anyone, not yet." Her brief silence communicated understanding. "I'll be there." As Elijah hung up, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had come to Willow Creek seeking redemption, hoping to make amends for abandoning his hometown. Now, it seemed, redemption would require more than just building a clinic and reconnecting with Sarah and their daughters. It would mean standing against whatever forces threatened the community's well-being, even if those forces came wrapped in the respectable veneer of local business interests. For the first time since the explosion that took his sight, Elijah felt the familiar fire of righteous determination burning in his chest. Willow Creek had given him life, shaped his earliest dreams, and now, unknowingly, given him 3 daughters. It was time to repay that debt in full, whatever the cost. Morning arrived with a gentle rain tapping against the hotel window. Elijah had barely slept, his mind cycling through memories and possibilities. By the time Marcus knocked on his door, at 7, he had already showered and dressed, Sarah's journal safely tucked in his jacket pocket. "Good." "Morning, sir," Marcus greeted him. "You're up early." "I need you to do something for me," Elijah said, foregoing their usual pleasantries. "There's a photograph in the front pocket of this journal." He extracted the small leather-bound book and held it out. "I need you to describe it to me." Marcus took the journal and carefully removed the photograph. "It's a bit faded. Looks to be about 7 or 8 years old. It shows 3 newborn babies in hospital bassinets side by side. They're wearing pink caps." He paused. "There's a woman in a hospital bed behind them. Brown hair, looks exhausted but happy. And there's a date stamp in the corner, September 15th, 2018. "Is there anything written on the back?" Elijah asked, his voice tight. Marcus turned the photo over. "Yes, Megan, Madison and Mackenzie Williams. 6 pounds, 2 ounces, 5 pounds, 11 ounces, 6 pounds even. Their father's eyes." Elijah sank into the nearest chair, the confirmation washing over him. "Their father's eyes," he repeated softly. "Sir?" Marcus's voice held concern. "Is everything all right? Whose journal is this?" "Sarah Williams," Elijah replied. "The waitress from the diner yesterday. And I believe I'm the father of her children." An hour later, Elijah stood outside Emma's diner, Scout by his side. The bell jangled as he entered. "Good morning," a different voice than Sarah's greeted him. "Take a seat anywhere, hon." "Actually," Elijah said, "I was hoping to speak with Sarah Williams. Is she working today?" "Sarah?" The woman, Emma herself, sounded surprised. No, she called in this morning. Said one of her girls woke up with a fever. First time she's missed a shift in months, poor thing. Do you happen to have her address? Elijah asked. I have something of hers I need to return. Emma hesitated. And you are? An old friend, Elijah replied. Dr. Elijah Bennett. I've just moved back to town to open a clinic. Dr. Bennett? Emma's tone shifted to one of recognition. Well, why didn't you say so? Sunrise Apartments, Building C, Unit 304, about 10 minutes from here off Maple Street. At Sarah's apartment, Elijah knocked on door 304, journal clutched in his hand. The door opened partially, the security chain still engaged. Elijah, Sarah's voice registered surprise. How did you find my apartment? Emma gave me your address, he explained. You left this at the gazebo yesterday. He held out the journal. I thought it might be important to you. The door closed briefly, then reopened fully. Come in, Sarah said, resignation mixing with something else in her tone. Mackenzie has a slight fever. She's resting on the couch. Elijah stepped inside, immediately struck by the modest warmth of the apartment. The scents of herbal tea and children's medicine mingled with the underlying notes of lavender and vanilla. Mom, who is it? A small voice called from what Elijah presumed was the living room. A friend of mine, Sarah answered. Dr. Bennett, he's going to be opening a new clinic in town. Scout led Elijah carefully through the entryway. He could sense the smallness of the space, hear the slight echo that suggested sparse furnishings. Are you going to make Kenzie better? Another child's voice, nearly identical to the first but with a slightly different inflection, asked from closer by. Elijah smiled in the direction of the voice. I'm not that kind of doctor today. I just came to return something to your mother. She makes the yuckiest medicine, the girl confided, but she says the worse it tastes, the better it works. That's often true, Elijah agreed, charmed by the child's frankness. And you are? I'm Madison, she replied proudly. Megan's in the kitchen making tea, and Kenzie's the sick one. Sarah cleared her throat. Madison, honey, would you go check on your sister? Make sure she's drinking her water. Okay, Mom. Small footsteps padded away, leaving Elijah alone with Sarah. I'm sorry about the intrusion, Elijah said quietly, extending the journal toward her. But after I found this, I discovered something I think we need to discuss. Sarah took the journal from his hand. You read it. It wasn't a question. I had Marcus scan a page for me, Elijah admitted. And we found the photograph. Sarah, why didn't you tell me? Yesterday at the gazebo. Not here, Sarah interrupted, her voice low and urgent. Not with the girls awake. They don't know, Elijah. About you, I mean. The confirmation hit him with the force of physical contact. So it's true. They're mine. Sarah's silence was answer enough. Can you come back tonight? Around 8. Mrs. Tanner next door can listen for the girls while they sleep. Of course, Elijah agreed immediately. Sarah, not now, she repeated firmly. Please. That evening, Elijah returned to Sarah's apartment. After the girls were asleep, Sarah guided him through their lives via a photo album, describing each image in detail. The triplets as newborns, their first birthday celebration, preschool graduations, Halloween costumes, Christmas mornings. With each description, Elijah felt a curious mixture of joy and grief. Joy at discovering these precious moments, grief at having missed them. By the time Sarah closed the album, Elijah's cheeks were damp with silent tears. They're extraordinary, he said simply. They are, Sarah agreed, and they're happy, Elijah. Despite everything, the small apartment, my long hours, the occasional struggle to make ends meet, they're genuinely happy children. I don't want to disrupt that, Elijah assured her. But I want to be part of it if you'll let me. Not to take over, not to supplant what you've built, but to add to it. And when you leave again? Sarah asked. When the next crisis calls you to some distant corner of the world? I'm not leaving, Elijah stated firmly. The clinic here in Willow Creek is my last project. This is where I'm putting down roots, Sarah, where I intend to stay. After much discussion, Sarah agreed to allow Elijah to meet the girls properly, though they would need to take things slowly, introducing him first as a friend, before revealing his true relationship to them. As their conversation was wrapping up, Sarah shared a troubling development. "I've had an uncomfortable encounter with Richard Caldwell. Do you know him?" Caldwell. The name sounds vaguely familiar, Elijah frowned. "He owns Caldwell Pharmaceuticals," Sarah explained. "He approached me at the diner, offered me a job on the spot. Twice my current salary to work in his R&D department. When I declined, he wasn't pleased. Said something about how Willow Creek doesn't need outsiders coming in and disrupting established businesses. Sounds like we've got competition we didn't anticipate," Elijah noted with concern. "Or opposition," Sarah corrected. "Elijah, Caldwell has influence here. His company employs a lot of people, sponsors local events, donates to political campaigns. If he decides your clinic is a threat to his business interests, then we'll need to be prepared," Elijah finished. "Thank you for the warning." Later investigation revealed troubling information about Caldwell Pharmaceuticals, regulatory violations, improper marketing of opioid medications to rural clinics, and questionable lobbying practices. If Elijah and Sarah were planning to research non-addictive pain management alternatives, they would be directly threatening a significant revenue stream for Caldwell. The next day, after receiving information that Caldwell might be monitoring Sarah, Elijah called her with concern. "I think we need to be careful, very careful." "I'm listening," Sarah replied, her voice low. "Not over the phone," he said. "Can you meet me tomorrow? At the gazebo again, perhaps?" "I work until 4, Sarah reminded him. "After that, I could spare an hour." 4:30 at the gazebo, Elijah confirmed. "And Sarah, maybe don't mention this meeting to anyone, not yet." Her brief silence communicated understanding. "I'll be there." As Elijah hung up, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had come to Willow Creek seeking redemption, hoping to make amends for abandoning his hometown. Now it seemed redemption would require more than just building a clinic and reconnecting with Sarah and their daughters. It would mean standing against whatever forces threatened the community's well-being, even if those forces came wrapped in the respectable veneer of local business interests. For the first time since the explosion that took his sight, Elijah felt the familiar fire of righteous determination burning in his chest. Willow Creek had given him life, shaped his earliest dreams, and now, unknowingly, given him 3 daughters. It was time to repay that debt in full, whatever the cost. Sunday morning arrived with perfect autumn weather. Elijah stood at the entrance to the community garden, Scout at his side, his heart pounding with anticipation. "They're not here yet," Marcus reported. "It's still 5 minutes early. How does the garden look?" Elijah asked, wanting to form a mental image. "Charming," Marcus replied. "Raised beds organized in concentric circles around a central gazebo, late-season vegetables and herbs in most plots. There's a children's section with small tools and whimsical markers." Elijah nodded. "I'll be fine from here, Marcus. Come back in 2 hours." As Marcus departed, Elijah heard the unmistakable sound of children's voices approaching. 3 distinct voices, similar in pitch but each with its own cadence, accompanied by Sarah's lower, gentler tones. "Remember what we talked about," Sarah was saying. "Dr. Bennett can't see, so you need to introduce yourselves when you speak to him." "But his dog can see us, right?" one of the girls asked. "Yes, Scout helps Dr. Bennett navigate, but you should still say who you are," Sarah explained patiently. "Dr. Bennett," the first small voice reached him. "I'm Madison. Remember me from when Kenzie was sick. Is your dog here? Can we pet him now?" "Madison, give him a chance to answer," Sarah admonished gently. Elijah chuckled. "Hello, Madison. Yes, Scout is here, and yes, you may pet him, but one at a time and gently." "I'm Megan," a second voice introduced, slightly more reserved. "I'm the oldest by 8 minutes. Mom says you're a doctor, but not the kind that makes people better when they're sick." "That's right," Elijah confirmed. "I help build hospitals and clinics where people can go to get better." "Because you can't see." This came from the third girl, Mackenzie, her voice softer but no less curious. "Kenzie, Sarah sounded mortified. "It's all right," Elijah assured her. "Yes, Mackenzie, partly because I can't see, but also because I found I could help more people by building places where many doctors can work, rather than being just one doctor myself." "That's smart," Mackenzie approved. "Like how Mom says 3 heads are better than 1 when we're solving problems." "Girls, why don't you show Dr. Bennett your section of the garden?" Sarah suggested. Small hands suddenly grasped Elijah's, one on each side, while the third girl announced she would guide Scout. "I've got your right hand," Megan informed him. "And I've got your left," Madison added. "Kenzie's holding Scout's leash." For 20 minutes, the triplets described their garden plot in vivid detail: the height of the tomato plants, the scent of the herbs, the colors of Madison's flowers. They placed Elijah's hands on different plants, letting him feel the differences in texture and structure. "Dr. Bennett, do you want to hear a secret?" Madison asked suddenly, her voice dropping to what she thought was a whisper. "I'd be honored," Elijah replied seriously. "We're not just regular triplets," Madison confided. "We're special triplets." "How so?" Elijah asked. "Well," Mom says, "we're identical, which means we came from the same egg that split into 3 parts," Madison explained. "But we think we have special powers too." "Madison," Sarah cut in, her voice carrying a warning note. "It's not a wild story," Megan defended. "Sometimes I know what Kenzie's thinking before she says it, and sometimes when Madison is at art class and I'm at soccer, I can feel if she's happy or sad. And I always know when one of them is about to get sick," Mackenzie added solemnly. Elijah was fascinated. "That's remarkable. Some studies suggest that identical multiples do share special connections beyond what we fully understand scientifically." "See, Mom, Dr. Bennett believes us," Madison sounded triumphant. "Dr. Bennett is being kind," Sarah replied with amusement. "Why don't you 3 check on the community pumpkin patch?" When the girls were out of earshot, Sarah moved closer to Elijah. "Sorry about that. They've been building this special triplets mythology since they could talk." "It's charming," Elijah assured her. "And who knows, there may be more truth to it than science currently recognizes." "They like you," Sarah said softly. "They're just being kind," Elijah echoed her earlier words with a smile. "No," Sarah corrected. "They're being genuine. They don't warm to everyone this quickly, especially not Megan. She's our cautious one." "Thank you for this, Sarah, for giving me this chance with them." "I've been thinking about what to tell them," Sarah admitted. "About who you are to them. Not yet, but eventually." Elijah nodded. "However you want to handle it, whatever timeline feels right." "I thought perhaps we could start with you being a family friend," Sarah suggested. "Someone I knew years ago, who's come back to town. Let them get comfortable with you first, then gradually—" "That sounds perfect," Elijah agreed readily. Small steps. The remainder of the garden visit passed in a blur of activity, examining a massive pumpkin the girls had discovered, exploring the herb section, and finally, a picnic lunch Sarah had prepared. As they ate, Elijah found himself enveloped in domestic happiness so profound it almost hurt. This was what he had missed: the simple joy of family togetherness, the overlapping conversations, the casual affection. "Dr. Bennett," Mackenzie asked, "why did you come back to Willow Creek? Mom says you used to live here a long time ago. Then you went away to help people in other places." Elijah considered his answer carefully. "Sometimes when you've been away from home for a very long time, you start to miss it. I miss the mountains, the river, the feeling of belonging somewhere, and I thought that maybe I could help people here too." "Are you going to stay?" Megan asked, her question direct, but her tone suggesting the answer mattered to her. "Yes," Elijah replied without hesitation. "I'm planning to stay for good this time." "Good," Madison declared decisively, "because Scout needs a yard to run around in, not a hotel room. Right, Mom?" Sarah made a non-committal sound, caught between amusement and the desire to temper the girls' rapidly forming attachment. As they prepared to part ways, Sarah surprised Elijah with an invitation. "I was thinking you might join us for dinner on Wednesday evening. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti night at our apartment." "I'd love that," Elijah replied, delighted. Yes, Madison exclaimed, while her sisters echoed similar enthusiasm. Can Scout come too? Of course, Sarah assured her. Scout is always welcome. Each of the girls insisted on hugging Elijah goodbye. Madison with enthusiasm, Megan with reserve, and Mackenzie with careful consideration for his blindness. Their affection, freely given, filled his heart to bursting. By Wednesday evening, Elijah was practically vibrating with anticipation. Before he could knock on Sarah's door, it flew open, and 3 high-pitched voices called out in welcome. "Dr. Bennett, Scout, you came." The apartment smelled wonderful: garlic, tomatoes, fresh bread, and the underlying scent of home. Scout was immediately led away by Madison, while Megan took Elijah's hand to guide him to the sofa. "I cleaned it specially," she informed him solemnly. "No crumbs or toys to trip on." Dinner was chaotic in the best possible way. Past dishes, spilled water quickly mopped up. 3 different conversations happening simultaneously. Throughout it all, Elijah found himself relaxing into the comfortable family dynamic. As Sarah served bowls of ice cream for dessert, Madison suddenly asked, "Dr. Bennett, do you have any kids?" The question froze everyone except Madison herself, who continued blithely, "Because if you don't, you could practice being a dad with us. You're pretty good at it already." "Madison!" Sarah exclaimed, mortified. Elijah, however, recovered his composure. "That's very kind of you, Madison. I don't have any children that I've raised, no. But I think being a dad would be the most wonderful job in the world." "Better than being a doctor?" Megan asked skeptically. "Much better," Elijah confirmed. "Doctors help people get well, but parents help little people grow into big people, with ideas and dreams and personalities. That seems like the most important work there is." A hushed silence fell over the table, broken only when Mackenzie said quietly, "Our dad must not have thought so." Sarah's sharp intake of breath was audible. "Kenzie, we've talked about this." "I know," Mackenzie replied, her voice small but determined. "You said our dad didn't know about us, that it wasn't his fault. But if being a dad is the most important job, wouldn't he have wanted to know? Wouldn't he have tried to find out?" The innocent question struck Elijah like a physical blow. This wasn't how he had imagined the conversation about his identity would unfold. Sarah came to his rescue. "Sometimes life is complicated, sweetheart. Adults make mistakes or miss opportunities. It doesn't mean they wouldn't have cared if they'd known." The subject successfully diverted. The triplets eagerly cleared their dessert dishes and led Elijah to a small reading nook where Mackenzie had selected 3 picture books specifically for him. As Sarah read aloud, taking on different characters and cadences, Elijah felt a profound sense of belonging wash over him. Later, after the girls were asleep, Sarah rejoined Elijah on the sofa. "Well, that was illuminating." "I'm sorry about Mackenzie's question," Elijah said quietly. "None. All of us were prepared for that," Sarah assured him. "But it's natural they'd be curious. They've never had a consistent male figure in their lives besides my father, and he passed away last year." Madison's suggestion about practicing being a dad with them, do you think they're actually picking up on something? Sarah was quiet for a moment. "They're perceptive children. They've noticed the change in me since you arrived, and they clearly feel comfortable with you, which is unusual." "Do you think it's time to tell them?" Elijah asked, his heart racing. Sarah sighed heavily. "I've been thinking about that non-stop since Sunday. They're clearly drawn to you, and hiding the truth feels increasingly dishonest." "But," Elijah prompted, sensing her reservation. "But once we tell them, everything changes," Sarah replied. "Their entire understanding of their family shifts. And what happens if I disappear again?" Elijah finished. "Yes," Sarah admitted. "I know you say you're staying, but your life has been defined by movement, by global causes. What happens when Willow Creek starts to feel small again?" "I can't predict the future," Elijah said honestly, "but I can tell you that nothing would make me abandon my daughters now that I know they exist. Even if I were called away temporarily, I would always return to them. Always." The conviction in his voice seemed to reach Sarah. "Then perhaps it is time. Not immediately. Let's give it another week or two. But soon. However you want to handle it, I'll follow your lead." "We should do it together," Sarah decided. "Present a united front. Make it clear that neither of us is to blame, that circumstances simply complicated things." Elijah nodded. "Yes, together. And Sarah, thank you for considering this, for allowing me into their lives." "Easier, perhaps, but not right," Sarah replied. "They deserve to know you, Elijah, and despite everything, I think you deserve to know them too." The simple acknowledgement meant more to Elijah than Sarah could possibly know. He reached out, finding her hand resting on the sofa between them, and covered it with his own. "Whatever happens with us," he said softly, "whatever complications Caldwell or anyone else might create, we'll face it together, for them." Sarah turned her hand beneath his, interlacing their fingers in a gesture that felt like both a promise and a tentative exploration of possibilities. "For them," she agreed. Meanwhile, the clinic renovation progressed rapidly, with Sarah officially accepting the research position. But beneath this domestic harmony, tension simmered. Richard Caldwell had increased his campaign of pressure against the clinic project, delaying permits, spreading rumors, even attempting to poach staff members. More concerning were reports about unfamiliar vehicles observed near Sarah's apartment building and a break-in at the university greenhouse where her research specimens were cultivated. Nothing had been taken, but several plant specimens had been damaged, including the rare Appalachian varieties that showed the most promise for pain management applications. The situation was becoming increasingly clear. Their growing family happiness was under threat, from forces determined to protect their profit margins, no matter the cost. But Elijah and Sarah were equally determined to stand their ground, for the clinic, for the community, and most importantly, for the three little girls who had unwittingly brought them back together. 2 weeks passed in a blur of clinic preparations, dinners at Sarah's apartment, and weekend outings with the triplets. Each day, Elijah felt the bonds with his daughters strengthening, their initial curiosity evolving into genuine affection. Sarah, too, had noticeably softened, the professional wall gradually giving way to moments of warmth. On a crisp Thursday evening, Sarah and Elijah had finally decided it was time. The triplets had been told a special family meeting would follow, dinner prompting speculation ranging from, "We're getting a puppy like Scout," Madison's hope, to "Dr. Bennett is moving away," Mackenzie's fear. Now, with dinner cleared away and the girls settled expectantly on the living room rug, the moment had arrived. Sarah sat beside Elijah on the sofa, close enough that he could feel her trembling slightly. "Girls," she began, "Dr. Bennett and I have something important to tell you, something that might be surprising but that we hope will make you happy once you understand." "Are you getting married?" Madison blurted. "No, honey," Sarah replied quickly. "This is about Dr. Bennett and who he is to our family." "You know how you've sometimes wondered about your father?" Sarah continued carefully. "How I've told you that he didn't know about you, that circumstances kept us apart." A collective intake of breath from the triplets indicated sudden understanding. Mackenzie was the first to speak. "Is Dr. Bennett our dad?" The directness of the question momentarily stunned both adults. Sarah recovered first. "Yes, sweetheart, Dr. Bennett is your father." A beat of silence followed, then Madison's voice burst forth. "I knew it. I told you, didn't I? I said we looked like him around the eyes." "You did not," Megan countered, though her voice held more wonder than disagreement. "But I did think it was weird how Kenzie talked to him right away. She never talks to strangers." "Because he's not a stranger," Mackenzie stated with simple logic. "He's our dad." Elijah found himself unable to speak, overwhelmed by their reactions, not shock or anger, but a kind of validation, as if they had sensed the truth all along. "But why didn't you tell us before?" Megan asked practically. "Why did we have to wait until now?" Sarah exchanged a glance with Elijah. "We wanted to give you time to get to know each other first, and we needed to be sure about how things would work going forward. Can we call you Dad? Mackenzie asked Elijah directly. Elijah's throat tightened with emotion. I would be honored if you did, but only when you're ready. I'm ready now, Madison declared without hesitation. Dad, Dad, Dad. She tested the word with increasing volume. But why couldn't you find us before? Megan pressed. Elijah leaned forward. Your mother and I knew each other many years ago. We cared for each other very much, but our lives took different directions. Years later, we saw each other briefly, and then I had to leave for my work overseas. Shortly after that, I was injured in an accident that took my sight. During my recovery, your mother tried to reach me but couldn't get through. And I made a mistake, Sarah added softly. I should have tried harder to tell your father about you. And I should have come back to Willow Creek sooner, Elijah countered. We both made choices that kept us apart, but neither of us ever stopped caring. This explanation seemed to satisfy the triplets, who exchanged glances as if silently conferring. Then they scrambled off the floor and onto the sofa, surrounding Elijah and Sarah in a group hug that threatened to overwhelm Elijah's composure completely. I told you we were special triplets, Madison whispered loudly. We found our dad with our special powers. Neither adult contradicted her. Later that week, Elijah received an unexpected call from Sarah. I've just had a rather uncomfortable encounter with Richard Caldwell, she explained tensely. He approached me at the diner, mentioned that he'd heard about my family situation and how a single mother of 3 could really use financial security. That sounds like an implied threat, Elijah said, his voice hardening. It felt like one, Sarah agreed. But here's the concerning part. He knew about my specific research focus, information I've only shared with you and my academic advisors. The situation escalated further when Sarah received a formal cease and desist letter from Caldwell Pharmaceuticals, claiming her research infringed on proprietary extraction methods they'd patented. That same evening, Emma called Sarah to report that 2 men had come to the diner asking questions about her schedule, and the girls. The implications were clear. Caldwell was willing to use intimidation tactics to protect his business interests. Elijah's protective instincts flared. I want you and the girls to move into the clinic's residential wing. It's secure, there's 24-hour monitoring. Elijah, we can't just uproot their lives because of vague threats, Sarah interrupted, and hiding won't solve the problem. Then we need to neutralize him, Elijah said firmly. Marcus has been compiling information about Caldwell's questionable business practices, but we need more concrete evidence. Sarah hesitated, then revealed that a security camera at the university greenhouse had captured someone wearing a Caldwell Pharmaceuticals lab coat tampering with her plant specimens. It's not enough on its own, but it might be a starting point. That evening, Marcus called with unexpected news. A whistleblower from Caldwell Pharmaceuticals contacted me through the clinic's website. She has documentation showing the company has been deliberately suppressing research on botanical alternatives to their opioid products. She's willing to meet, but only with you and Ms. Williams present, tonight. An hour later, they sat in the gazebo at Riverside Park. The whistleblower, Jessica Mercer, explained that she'd been documenting Caldwell's systematic burial of research, showing plant-based alternatives could be effective for certain types of pain management, intimidation of researchers, and misleading marketing about addiction risks. I've compiled documentation, internal emails, research reports, marketing strategy memos, everything, Jessica explained, her voice trembling with suppressed anger. My brother died of an opioid overdose 3 years ago. He started with a legitimate prescription from Caldwell's products. As they discussed how to proceed, Scout suddenly tensed beside Elijah's leg, growling softly. Car headlights, Sarah whispered. 2 vehicles blocking the park entrance. They followed me, Jessica gasped. No time for that now, Elijah interrupted. There's a service path behind the gazebo. Sarah, can you guide us? They moved quickly, Elijah calling Marcus for extraction. They narrowly escaped Caldwell's men, but Marcus spotted a vehicle following them as they left. We can't go back to the hotel or Sarah's apartment, Elijah decided. Take us directly to the clinic. The security system is active and the residential wing is ready. Once safely inside the clinic, Jessica handed over a flash drive containing her evidence, which Marcus immediately began reviewing. "This is explosive material," he confirmed. "Internal memos explicitly discussing how to undermine research into botanical alternatives, directives to downplay addiction risks, even discussions about targeting doctors in economically depressed areas with higher prescription incentives." "Need to go public immediately," Sarah insisted. "They know we have the information now. The longer we wait, the more time they have to prepare counters. And more importantly, they know Jessica came to us. What's to stop them from targeting my daughters to apply pressure?" The possibility sent ice through Elijah's veins. "You're right. Contact our legal team and reach out to trusted media contacts." Jessica suggested contacting the state attorney general, who had been looking for evidence to pursue Caldwell for years. His daughter was affected by the opioid crisis. It's personal for him. By dawn, the wheels were in motion. The Attorney General's office had dispatched investigators to secure additional evidence at Caldwell Pharmaceuticals, while trusted, journalists received carefully prepared information packages detailing the company's misdeeds. As morning light filtered through the clinic windows, Elijah found Sarah in the small kitchen, making coffee with mechanical movements that spoke of exhaustion and worry. "We'll have you home to them soon," Elijah assured her, placing gentle hands on her shoulders. "The security team is in place, they're safe." She leaned back against him slightly. "This isn't what I imagined when you came back to Willow Creek. Corporate whistleblowers, midnight chases, security details." "Not my plan either," Elijah admitted. "I just wanted to build a clinic, reconnect with my past, find some peace." "And instead you found triplets and trouble," Sarah said with a wan smile. "The best kind of trouble," Elijah replied, turning her gently to face him. "The kind that matters." For a moment they stood close together, the connection between them palpable. Then, with careful deliberation, Elijah leaned forward and kissed her. Not a passionate embrace, but a gentle promise of support, of partnership, of possibilities. When they separated, Sarah's breath came slightly faster. "That's new." "But not unwelcome?" Elijah asked, uncertain. Her hand came up to rest against his cheek. "Not unwelcome at all, just complicated." "Life is complicated," Elijah acknowledged, "but some things are very simple. I love our daughters, and I'm falling in love with you again. Or maybe still, I'm not sure the feeling ever truly went away." By the end of the day, the story had broken publicly. Richard Caldwell was shown on television being escorted to a waiting car, his face grim as he refused to answer reporters' questions. The company's stock was plummeting, and preliminary injunctions were being filed against its operations. Sarah brought the triplets to the clinic, deciding they would all stay there temporarily for added security. "Dad," Madison